a living history production.
Hello, listeners. And after the tragically disturbing failure to announce this podcast properly, Gary Bain would like to have another go at introducing the podcast. What would you like? Come on, Gary, go.
Hello, and welcome to Peter Hart's Military History Podcast.
That's so much better. Although I did hear a trace of the Duke of Westminster just
slipped in.
And we're here on Gallipoli Day. God knows what day it is. Day 4. I'm going for 4.
It has to be day 5.
Oh, excellent. We might have missed a day. And well, today was a big day for us, wasn't it, Gary?
Was it?
Yes, it was.
Oh, it was a big day for us. Well, it started very professionally because Bain arrived on time, and we headed off this morning straight up towards Chunuk Bair, and then up to Hill 971 was the first stop.
It was, and was the
over that illegal road.
How did you find that road? Which way did you decide to look, left or right?
Could look
it
left,
is readers,
right.
It is a little bit high, isn't it, Gary?
It's very high. It's a very narrow road. Our good friend Craig Roach thought that the road had actually collapsed. He sent me a message saying the road had collapsed.
Silly old Craig. He probably passed through there before.
So you had a choice. You could look left or right, and I decided to put my head between my legs.
Was it scary?
It was very scary, Peter. I think we were trying to wind up one or two of the customers on the coach with us, and I think we managed it magnificently. It is scary. It is a scary road. And,
well, it's in such good condition, isn't it? As you go across it, it's wobbly. And of course, Bulent was continually talking to the driver. Distracting. Yeah. So the driver spent most of the time looking at Bulent. I did think this was a little bit far, but we got there. And the driver is, of course, wonderful. And he got us up to Hill 971, which is it's some sort of fire watchy station.
Why is it called Hill 971?
I have no idea, Gary. Can you imagine?
No idea at all.
Anyway, the listeners can look it up.
Okay.
A little bit of work for them is good. We can't spoon feed them.
But the views, we climbed up onto the observation point, and the views, you've got to the one side, you've got Suvla, you can see the Salt Lake quite clearly. You
Alabama.
can see Chocolate Hill, Green Hill, and you can see how close they are, one behind the other.
W Hills?
W Hills you can see.
You call them something else, don't you?
VW Hills, which is the only way I can manage to spot them.
You're literal minded, aren't you?
Yeah, and then you've got Hill 10 in the distance.
Which you can't see.
You can't see it, but I very often ask where it is.
You do. You do. It's always been
you had to repeat that because I wasn't listening. And then, of course, you look to the other side and you can see the Dardanelles.
You can. Very clearly.
Very clearly.
And then we discussed the attack on Hill Q by Cecil Allenson and the Gurkhas. Now, this is quite interesting because I've got quite a lot of time for him as an officer, and he certainly had quite a lot of time for himself. But there was another officer there, Mott, from the South Lancashires, who had a much more jaundiced view of the whole affair. What's interesting is they're saying, Allinson's saying that they could see the straits, and one great quote was they dominated Kilid Bahir. Do you think they dominated Kilid Bahir, or the big bastard, as Bulent calls it?
Yeah, I mean, the clue is in what Bulent calls it.
Yeah.
It's called the big bastard.
And what is the Kilid Bahir? Just explain to them again.
Well, firstly, you can see it from any point. It is the most dominant feature on the peninsula, and actually that is your strategic objective. If you haven't got Kilid Bahir, it doesn't matter what else you do.
So the tactical objectives of things like Achi Baba don't matter. Kilid Bahir is the great big massif that lies across, it's a great word, that lies across the peninsula. It is massive and a massif and a plateau.
Massif.
And there are no spurs off it.
I hate spurs.
Yeah, you do. You do hate spurs.
So, I mean, it was interesting because you get a really good panoramic view of the whole peninsula, which is, it's something that is very easy for us to do. We just go up there and we have a look. Not easy for
troops to get up there. And the poor old Gurkhas in South Lancashire got up there, they were shortly kicked off. Some shells arrived from some Allied artillery, followed by best part of a Turkish division coming up the hill. They never had a chance of keeping it. It wasn't the narrowest of margins. It wasn't a close run thing. They were kicked off because they were kicked off, and they always were going to be kicked off Hill Q. Where do we go then? No, so we drove back
over it.
I was even more scared. And even more perversely, again Boleyn distracted the driver.
The driver did not at any point look ahead. I was watching him, and at no point was his head at anything less than a right angle.
This is Suleiman, we love you. Yeah. But, Jesus wept, look at the road when you're going over there. It was quite exciting. And then we went to Chunuk and we started by going to the statue of Mustafa Kemal, a great man I think you admire. You were a captain of industry, a great man yourself in the world of commerce and industry, and you've got many things in common.
Well, I think you've got to look at the achievements of the man. We talked about the turning of the wheel of history yesterday, and where you pick your time. So, the Allies lost 1915, won in 1918, arguably lost in 22. I think Kemal Ataturk wins the campaign. He has a life where a reasonably man of reasonable low birth becomes the father of the nation. You've got to admire that.
By campaign, you mean the sort of wheel of history? He emerges on top. He emerges
on top. He, as an individual, we often talk about strong men of history through, the likes of Churchill and Hitler in Europe. He is a strong man of history. He comes out of this as the strong man of Turkey.
He certainly does, and yes, he does have faults, and most dictators have faults. But
no,
yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Yeah, I knew you would be. I know you. You've long hoped that one day you'd establish your own dictatorship. I believe
faultless dictatorship.
Faultless dictatorship. Yeah. So. We looked at that, and Boleyn told us the story of his watch that saved his life from a bit of shrapnel or a bullet, and that was good. And then we talked about the counterattack.
The counterattack's really important. It cannot be underestimated. You mentioned, it wasn't touch and go. As a campaign, I don't think any of it was ever touch and go, but there were touch and go times within the battle, and this was one.
Yeah, but what a counterattack it was, with thousands driving over Chunuk down onto 39th Brigade on the farm.
Yeah.
And what we've forgotten to mention is, of course, we visited the site of the Wellington's stand, which perversely is around the Turkish memorial up on Chunuk because the New Zealanders got there first, so they picked the highest point, even though that wasn't really where they were. They were where it's vice versa. Oh, and we discussed Malone again, William Malone, Lieutenant Colonel William Malone, and he's one of my favourites. He's so bad-tempered and grumpy.
Yeah.
Takes after.
And I never realised until today, actually, when we went down and looked at the memorial, his name's on that memorial.
Well, because his body was never found.
Yeah. I didn't realise that until today. Genuinely did not realise that.
And he fought a brave battle up there. They managed to take the summit. We talked about the New Zealanders coming up there. We talked about Malone's refusal to attack at one point when he thought it was suicide. We talked about the way Canongeiser's people turned up just in time at the top. We talked about the Aucklanders' attack. We talked about all these things. But for me, what matters is that the fight of the New Zealanders. And weren't you impressed by that statistic, which obviously was wrong because I gave it, of the 770 odd men that fought there, only about 70 were unwounded at the end of the time.
Yeah, I mean, whichever way you look at it, it's easy to look back on history, but these are people. These are people who are getting killed and injured, some of them mortally, but some of them not so, but having horrific injuries for the rest of their lives. And, and they're our grandfathers or our great-grandfathers, and you still have connection with them. So it was terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. That's a ridiculously high percentage.
And what did you think of the almost irony of Malone's death? Well, you can't make a joke of someone's death, and we're not doing. But in view of his opinion of Australians, it's quite sad, wasn't it, that he was hit by an Australian, probably right at the end of that terrible day. He was hit by an Australian shell right at the end of the fighting.
Yeah, all the evidence seems to suggest that everybody in his headquarters thought that the fighting was over for the day. It's ironic, I suppose, but nobody's death should be anything other than necessary. And you look at that and think, well, was that necessary?
Well, I'm not sure. Anyway, we talked, and then so the Wellingtons are replaced. The other units come in, the Wiltshires, other people, and then there's the counterattack we talked about earlier. I flicked out of order there, but it doesn't matter, does it? Because this is just a general.
But also,
review.
we walked back over there because we had ice cream.
Oh, well, that's what confused me. Now, can we talk about the ice cream? I thought
the ice cream. Yeah, the raspberry was very raspberry.
Yes. I think it was cherry actually, mate.
No, I lost my cherry.
Right, moving rapidly along again.
We then moved over to descend Rhododendron Ridge.
We did. Now
you went off because you went off.
Well,
with
Duddles, Colonel Duddles to you, Gary.
Colonel Duddles.
Tried to point out, your rank in the army. You need a little bit of respect for your betters.
I was known for respecting the officers when I was in the army.
Yes, I bet you were. And I went down there. We just went to see the farm cemetery, which is down a long, winding path, perfectly easy, and then walked along across the top of Cheshire Ridge. He wanted to go. He's taking a battalion, a regiment related to the Worcestershires to see the cemetery, which has got about 7 graves in it. But there's many men in there because the 39th Brigade was wiped out there, fundamentally wiped out. And then I walked along the path above Cheshire Ridge, which I couldn't find the entrance to, although I wasn't going down to it. And then it was exciting because I was about to meet you. And now, what had you seen on your way down? You were with the main group. You were like a sort of towering figure with them, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. No, so. We were with Valent and we went down. We looked at some tunnels. He pointed out the entrance. Well, in fact, he pointed out the exit to a tunnel first on the way down, and then the entrance to a tunnel. He talked about. He's always name dropping. He banged on about Peter Jackson.
Who's Peter Jackson?
Oh, he said he's the nicest Peter he knows. And then we carried on down. It's how can I put this? You've got to watch your footing.
Yeah,
it's not dangerous. It's easy to do.
It's no different for a walk in a Peak District, really, is it?
No, but you've got to watch your footing. I stepped onto a wooden step which collapsed under my great weight.
That's after we'd met. Yeah, that's right. Because we met you right on time. We could hear certain loud-voiced individuals bellowing. Oh, I'm not one to complain.
Yeah, I don't know who that was. But we met up and we continued down, down and up because it's interesting. People, actually commented today and said, well, I thought we were going down because there's quite a large part of Rhododendron Ridge which is up.
It is. Well, when you get to each major feature, you have to go up to it. We went across Tabletop, looked across to Little Tabletop. Now, have you ever been to Little Tabletop on Cheshire Ridge, Gary?
No. I think I was absent that day.
Was it, as you looked across, was it something you felt you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think I'd probably really like to do that sometime.
Well, make sure you do.
Yeah, it didn't look bad at all. And then, we carried on down. It's an interesting walk down. It takes about, hour and a half maybe. You can only go as fast as the slowest person. You've got to allow people to
photograph things.
Time to take photographs.
There's no point doing it if you just walk down.
No, and our good friend Paul Hildyard and I were composing a song on the way down.
Were you?
Yeah. We are walking down the hill. We are walking down the hill. We like James, but Pete will kill. We like James, but Pete will kill. Something like that.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's great.
The sentiments are
You don't want to hear the second verse.
And we're not going to, folks.
We got all the way down, pretty uneventful, no issues.
Some fantastic views across to the Sphinx on the left.
Good photograph opportunities all the way down. People were doing that. And then when we got down, we had lunch.
Next to the cemetery right at the bottom, the name of which I forgot.
After lunch, we popped back onto the coach, headed back up to North Beach.
To the Commemoration
site, which is a fantastic site.
Oh, it is.
Of the Sphinx. You're beneath the Sphinx.
It's just a shame that to get people there, they've utterly and completely destroyed Anzac Cove. Which
they have.
But there you go. That's it's everybody's country.
Now you went down with Dardanelles, who I believe did a little bit of a stand where I was getting involved in a betting scam with one of our Turkish guides.
Oh, excellent!
Did you win? To think I was some sort of tipster. No, I gave him 2 donkeys that came. I think it was 5th and last.
Hooray!
I think one of them's still running.
Dardanelles was talking about. Recruitment to the Australian and New Zealand forces, and in his view that the New Zealanders had organised it better because they worked out scientifically that they could raise and keep provisioned with men and organise 1 division, whereas the Australians said, we'll do 5, and then ran out of men. I happen to think that all the Australian divisions and the New Zealand division were quite good, so I don't. But they did run out of men in October 1918. Really run out, and that was the end of their fighting. Then where did we go? I've got no clue.
We went up to a cemetery which I can't remember the name
7th Australian something.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thanks for that.
Australian.
But we were looking for a particular inscription, weren't we?
Well, we haven't really found it. Although we found a couple.
We found a couple that were similar. But hey ho.
They'll be on our site later on.
They will be. So we paid our respects in those that cemetery, which we can't remember the name of. And then
7th Ambulance Field Cemetery. Sorry, it's like that.
Yes, it's very like that. And then, and this was new for me, I really quite enjoyed this. We had a very pleasant walk across a field.
Ploughed field,
heading from there towards Taylor's Gap.
That's interesting.
Which was a slightly less pleasant walk, to be honest.
Well, I like that bit. It's the field.
It's nice. It's just, there was quite a lot of
scrub at the end.
Scrub at the end.
That was all right.
Yeah, it's okay, but, I probably shouldn't have worn a bikini.
Well, it was very fetching and it suited you, so I just wouldn't worry about it. And the photographs are spectacular.
And it's only a short space. And you were explaining how it's really, A, it's not following orders, and B, it's laziness, because they decided...
The left assaulting column decided to take a shortcut, didn't they?
Based on the advice of a local Greek who said, you can come this way, Gub, and it'll be really easy, and there's nothing that could possibly go wrong, except there were a few, not many, but there were a few well-armed, determined, well-motivated Turks who had other ideas.
And, of course, getting 2 brigades, the Monash's, at first the Cox's Indian Brigade, 29th Indian Brigade, and then Monash's 4th Australian Brigade, trying to get them through there. I mean, it got quite crowded in there with us.
Yeah, that's true.
There's only 15 of us.
That's a good point.
Getting 5,000 people through there, or whatever it is, it was just really difficult. And they got blockage, kept stopping, had to send off people to try and clear the snipers away. Stoppage. Monash was trying to clear it, Cox was trying to clear it, but they just, time passed, and they just get hopelessly behind schedule. And whose fault is it? Well, the rumour is, and I've never been quite certain of whether it's true or not, they shot the Greek. I hope they didn't, but knowing the British Army, I bet they did. For bad advice. They should have gone round, if you look at them, at Waldron's Point, but they didn't. They went through...
it is a shortcut.
It is a great shortcut when we came out of it. But when we came out of it, I was blathering on with a cheery, blathery type Pete fashion. Blah, blah, blah. It's very easy to get lost in this valley. I go there.
You went the wrong way.
And you can go wrong way up to 90 degrees.
And you went the wrong way.
And Belen asked me which way to go. And I went the wrong way. And how many degrees was I out by?
Oh, about 45.
Yeah. There we go. And that's it's difficult. And if you go through at night, that's the sort of thing that happens. And I tried to pretend that it was a deliberate thing to show people, you know.
Oh, they swallowed that.
Did they?
Yeah, and then I went round and disabused them of that view.
You told them I was just an idiot.
Yeah, I said that you had no idea. But it was a great walk. Not long, probably just over the hour, I think. Actually.
Not long. We went over Stebnicki Bear. And then across, visited one of Roger's favourite wells.
Yeah,
and he was blathering on about beehives, but I really didn't understand what it was.
Honey.
Was it? I didn't understand that, and that's not a rude or anything joke.
No.
He really was blathering on about beehives, and then we went up to Hill 60, always a favourite place of mine, and we sort of we talked about the attack on it was just a bit earlier than the main attack on the 21st, where these poor Australians attacked across from Stebnicki Bear, the route we'd come, and was slaughtered. And we talked about the fields catching fire. It was all a bit grim, wasn't it?
It was.
And people were tired as well by this time. There's no point, it's hot. People were tired.
Some of the people with us are very enthusiastic. I'm going to give Warren a shout out at this point.
Warren Smith.
Because we were able to entrust him with a couple of the readings. They were a bit long, but because he some were tired, he wasn't. He's been very enthusiastic, very helpful.
Great guy.
And he did 2 readings, I think.
He did, yeah, he did. Well, he did later. So we did the readings there and talked about that, and then we went, remember, to look at the cemetery, which was great. And then you had a map, didn't you, which you got off one of our websites, and you were quite interested, drawn by Malcolm Hancock, who I'd interviewed, and it showed the basic layout of the trenches and where we were, and that was very handy, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it also demonstrated that the shape of the cemetery and the memorial was in the shape of the trench system and the roads, for want of a better word, at the time. I think he drew this from memory. He did. Having located, I think it was a crater that was his reference point.
Oh, well, he went out there in 1980, and I think he did, or 1986 even.
But it was a great little map, and it was very useful to pass around, and I think everybody got something from that map. Yeah. You know, we got professional soldiers such as Dardanelles, for example, who was keen to look at the map, but even, just people who don't perhaps use maps on a regular basis could appreciate where we were on that map.
We were looking at the final, so we looked at poor old Hugh Throssell, and his heroic defence of after they'd finally taken it on the night, I can't remember, at the end of August, the final defence, and he got a VC for his actions on that night.
Rightly so, I think that
what a fight. And we always remember Sid Ferrier, who had his arm blown off and still chirpy and cheerful. He died, of course. It's very, very upsetting in some ways. Well, in many ways. And we talked about how the point of the hill is it's a double-crowned hill. And the British had to keep one and wanted the other crown. And the Turks had to keep one crown and wanted the British one. And the reason is that the one on the British side dominated all the link between Suva and ANZAC, and the one on the Turkish side dominated all the way round behind the W hills and behind the Turkish sides. And of course, both sides just got the one they wanted, the one they needed, but not the one they wanted. Yeah. And so the fighting there was dreadful, and there was bones all over the fields there. And we went up to see what we meant by that, and there's bones and everything, and it was called Bomba Tepe, and we had that picture, which again Warren had downloaded and was able to show to everybody, of all the bones on the hill. And I and Roger Chapman and many other people with tours over the years, with Matt's tours, our tours, have found bones in that field. And it's always a bit chastening and almost worrying.
We just briefly walked up there, had a quick look across to W Hills.
Just to prove it to the people.
Yeah, and arguably that is the most visible point to see them. You can't mistake them from that position.
No, you can't. The VW Hills.
The VW Hills. We headed back to the coach, and that was pretty much the end of the day. Back to the Hotel.
You might think it's the end of the day, but for me, there was an ice cream.
There was another ice cream opportunity. There's a theme developing here.
Well, I do like ice cream. Don't you?
No.
You seem to have one.
I'm on a diet. I had a salad for lunch and then 15 ice creams.
Well, that's what life's like on a battlefield tour, Gary. Looking forward to tomorrow?
Absolutely.
It's Suvla.